conversation that you're never going to have in any way, shape, or form in any Cisco course, Juniper, or anything else on this planet. Okay, and that is electronics. All right. Now, some philosophers, which I'm a very big philosopher, obviously, based on those who have listened to me for some time, philosophy is who I am. Okay, and I refuse, even as a kid, to do any. Even though philosophy was really big when I was younger, which is still again the philosophy of networking. Okay, philosophy is who I am. It is my DNA. Okay, I can sit here and talk to you about hours and hours and hours and days and months and years sitting down having a conversation about the philosophy of a particular subject. Okay, all right, this is who I am. Now, I have in my entire life refused to read any books from Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, okay? All right? Any philosopher, because people have a tendency of when they read something, they take that information and apply it to law. What should you be doing when you're doing your studying? Okay? Everything that you read in a book, you should be questioning. That is the power that you have. That is what brings out new questions, new discoveries. This is what it is to be a scientist at heart. Okay? It does not mean you have a master's degree or a PhD in science. Okay? This is just the nature of who you are. All right? As far as the concept of a scientist at heart, you should be questioning everything. All right? I have sat there and I have read something. I'm like, now that's some bullshit right there. And I would go into my lab and I would test it. I'm like, holy shit, there it is. Okay? All right? That is how you learn. Okay? All right? Some philosophers believe that no one is born with a soul. Okay? But it is developed and created through life and suffering and anguish, okay, and consequences. All right, and that type of philosophy has a sense of validity. Okay, all right. Now, of course, in order to have a sense of validity, we would actually have to argue the fact that a soul exists. Okay, making the conversation mute if it does not exist in the first place. All right? That's the concept of deep thought. All right? So what I'm going to teach you is the concept of what we are dealing with. Okay? And as an engineer, there's lots of things you are not told. Now, one of the things that makes Cisco is unique, besides their software, okay, all right, is their training. Anybody who listens to me training, okay, or listens to my training, realizes that I focus heavily on one thing, okay, that is an analogy to make you understand, okay, just like my analogy of networking. What are networking? What is networking? As far as a route and switch perspective, because that's what you're learning in the very beginning, how it all begins. Okay, because without the infrastructure layer, we will never have any movement of data from source to destination, nor will we ever be able to share resources and do what we need to do. Okay? All right. One of the questions that I asked when I was actually going through my training, and nobody could answer this question. And and the funny thing is, people could definitely answer it. I just could not find the correct keywords to get the information that I needed. Okay, and over a period of time, okay, sometimes it takes one sentence, one keyword, okay, that makes reading an entire 600-page book worth it. All right? And the question was, and I had that question for the longest time, okay, when I would ask other other engineers, and I wasn't an engineer at the time, okay, so um, they could not answer my question. And I'm telling you, it's not a good thing because my question was, do I need to have layer 2 connectivity in order for layer 3 to work? I swear, I shit you not. It's just as bad as me going to a telephone guy working in the box where all those twisted wires are and ask him, why are all the wires twisted? Okay? And he says, I don't know. And this has happened to me. I was in shock because how can you not know that? And when you ask him how long he's been doing this, I've been doing this for 25 years. Never in your life believe that over a period of time, someone's been in the field that they know what they're talking about. Okay? Because once that assumption is made, you have already screwed yourself over. Okay? Because you're just automatically going to take his word for law. All right? It is not what you do at work that makes you knowledgeable. That is just work. The real learning is at home. And I swear, this debate, okay, has been the epitome of my existence since I started networking, and I don't argue it anymore because 9 times out of 10, the person I'm arguing with has no sense of common reference. So without common reference, meaning that the reference of that subject is common to them. You can't have common sense, especially when someone says, I can't believe you did that. That's just common sense. It can't be common sense without it being common to you. Okay? Another statement that nobody seems to understand or get when you explain it to them. Okay? There's reasons why we put words in a definition or an explanation of an item. There's a reason for it. Common sense means it only becomes common sense to that individual when that sense that they are receiving as far as perception is concerned is common to them. Okay? All right? So if someone's never experienced something at all and the other person sees it as common sense, well, that person that sees it as common sense is common to them. Okay? All right? And they'll look at you like, you're lying. All right? And that's not the case. It just isn't. Now, very, 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 very important. Okay? You're talking to your buddy, all right? And you're doing some work, all right? Now, this person says, well, you got to watch out, man. Building a home isn't what it's cracked up to be. All right, you got to worry about electrical, plumbing, blah, 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 blah. Okay, and then the person says, okay, or you say to your buddy, okay, I don't have to worry about any of that. All right? That's why they have county codes. Okay, that's why we have inspectors. That's why we have professionals. And I expect the professionals to do their job. And as long as I am not burnt up to death, okay, it's not that big of a deal. That's why I'm hiring these people. Anything can be accomplished with the concept of getting somebody else that has that knowledge of that subject to do it. Nothing stops you in life except yourself. Okay? If you allow somebody else to tell you what you can't do and you accept that information and change your path by not doing it, okay? Not making a choice is still a choice. All right? And you have screwed yourself over because of that. Now, I want you to understand something, okay? There's so much misinformation, okay? And you're watching a YouTube video, and let's say you're talking about electronics, and this statement right here is the perfect one. Breakers are from 15 to 20 amps in your electrical panel. Okay, this is what someone said the other day when I was watching a YouTube video, and that is absolutely false. Okay, but it gives you the impression that from a perspective of electrical panel, you only need 15 and 20 amps. And anything that is needed more, okay, you can't figure out why you can't figure out why your breaker keeps tripping because you put a 15 amp circuit on something that needs a lot more. Okay, first of all, you brought wires to the actual circuit that can handle many more than 15 amps or 20 amps. Okay, your breaker panel alone could be a 200 amp breaker. Okay, all right, this these are people who are only focus and priority is to make money off of YouTube. Okay, so they take information, okay, and they repeat it as if they are the experts. All right. So back to our conversation with our buddy, and your comment is that's why I hire professionals. Okay, I know nothing about plumbing and electrical work. That's why I hired them. And then your buddy says, well, I do. Okay, and your buddy works at Wawa. Okay? He has no concept. Never has he worked as an electrician or a plumber or any trade work whatsoever, but he knows. And I'm telling you, the concept of ignorance, if I wanted to explain stupidity, okay, as Einstein defines it as the concept of doing the same thing, well, insanity, not stupidity, okay, doing the same thing and expecting different results. Okay, now that is applied to physics, especially when physics has its own laws that it does not break from. However, you have a variation of choices or decisions like you and I have, okay? All right? Think about that as a moving scale. You could say the same thing tomorrow that you did yesterday, okay, with the same action, but get different results because I will be able to make my choices, making his statement no validity. Okay? All right? Every rule in life has a means of being broken, except some things are static, period. Okay? All right? I've always said if you want magic in our lives and in our world, it exists in space. Okay? That's where magic is. We have plenty of magic, but it's in space. Because the physics closer to a black hole breaks down the physics as if we are close to the gravity as we're sitting right here. Okay? Perfect example. All right? I'm sure everyone out there are Marvel comic fans as far as the movies are concerned. Okay? All right? I grew up on comic books. So those movies have much of a relation to me as far as me having a conversation about them. Okay, so let's take the concept of Thor saying I have lived 1,500 years. Okay, 1,500 years of whose year? Okay, our year on Earth is based on the revolution or the complete orbit around the sun. Okay, what year? Whose year are you talking about? Yours on Asgard or mine? Okay, all right. There was some cartoon. I think I think it was Rick and Morty, of course, of always my favorite show, one of my favorite shows. But anyway, okay, the question. The alien was like, okay, so how many hours in a day here on Earth? He was like 24. He was like, that's it? Okay? And it cracked me up because I have conversations like this all the time where nobody else wants to discuss it because the concept isn't there. So my job as an engineer teaching you about the networking field is giving you perspective. Okay? All right? That's my responsibility. All right? That philosophy means something. Okay? It's not what you do, it's how you do it from a perspective, okay, that you are trying to obtain an exact result. All right? If you get close to that result, that's great. All right? Uh, Build something, okay, to prove to you why your concept of a particular subject is incorrect. And in fact, it is my responsibility, okay, as your friend, to tell you when you're wrong from the perspective of knowledge, real knowledge, not opinion. Okay? All right? That's why I don't discuss politics and I do not deal with philosophy on the concept of arguing. Okay, meaning getting upset or taking it personally, because that's the whole concept of the philosophy is philosophy, meaning that it's someone's perspective, okay, of the events in the current situation, and they have every right to have that perception. Okay, all right. Now the facts of that perception might be incorrect, and you could argue those facts. Okay. However, if I'm going to teach you how to move that 15-ton truck with a series of pulleys and creating a pulley system, and you tell me that's impossible, okay, all right, I will take the time to actually build that pulley system and pull that truck and have you pull it so you can understand the mechanical advantage of that physics. All right? Back in the day, okay, when I was heavy lifting, all right? It was my first concept of, oh, not my first, I'm sorry, my first concept of how deep you can go with a subject was car stereos. All right, it's not just simple as just hooking up wires. Okay, you got other parts. You got the speakers, you got the wattage of the speakers, you got the amperage. Okay, you got the wattage of the amplifier. Okay, all right. I literally was sitting in a car. Okay, with a guy that I was working for, and he owned a towing company. Okay, and out of his towing company, he sold mechanical services, meaning that you could bring your car to him and he will repair it and fix it. All right, so he had a mechanic, okay, and we were sitting in his car, right, doing some towing that night, and he turns on his speakers and he was like, he goes, I don't know why, it must be a short in my wiring, that's why the lights are dimming. And I said to him, okay, I was like, no, okay, you have to replace your alternator, okay, and he says, that's the most stupidest thing, Kyle, I ever heard. You think you're Mr. Know-it-all, okay? And the bottom line is, Kyle, the amplifier, I mean, the alternator for this truck to run all my equipment, especially my towing equipment, okay, is more inefficient. Okay, the power something as trivial as sound, and I'm like, no, dude, we're on a different ohm level. You have to buy one at a particular ohm level, okay, in order to not have your lights dim. Now, at this point, okay, I'm the idiot and I'm the Mr. Know-it-all, which he says again, now we're done. I'm not going to sit there and spend guys, I was 20 years old at the time. I'm 50 years old now. It's 30 years ago. Okay? I'm not going to take the time Now, at one point in my life when I was a teenager, I would argue to death. Okay, I'll bring out the books. Okay, I had proof. I had ways of backing my shit up. Okay, which nobody did back in the day except one of my buddies I grew up with. All right, and I learned a lot from him. Okay, and I mean a lot, until eventually I got recognition from him that I was capable of learning things at a particular level that he was not. And he, in my perspective, was the smartest guy on the planet. And I was privileged just to have a conversation with him. Okay? And we would have philosophical conversations beyond the average person that I've ever met in my entire life. And he will always take that cake. All right? But this guy, he's been doing this his whole life since he was a teenager. Okay? All right? He's been towing that was his first thing he got. Okay, before he even got himself a driving car, he got himself a tow truck. Okay? All right? And since that age, all right, 15, 16 years old, that's what he's done into his 50s. This is who he was. That was his life. That was his career. That was his business. Okay? He owned his own business ever since he was 15 years old, but had no concept of why his sound was dimming, and he saw it as a shortage. So that means that goes back to our main topic of this slide. Do not hire a plumber to work on your car. Okay? This guy that I'm conversating with, okay, is a tow truck driver and business owner. All right? And if anybody knows how running a business, it's never the concept of the technology that you're providing. Business is its own thing in its own sense. So to run a successful business, that's when I'm going to listen to them. Okay? To actually learn how to do towing, that is when I'm going to listen to them. All right? I'm never going to listen to him about anything about wiring in a car. And I'm going to tell you a true story, all right? Wiring is what I do, all right? That's just who I was, okay? All right? Electrical circuits, troubleshooting circuits, okay? That is what I'm good at back in the day, okay? All right? I did this for fun. So if that's the case, when my wife's, at the time, when her brake light was not working, okay, all right, I couldn't find where it was terminating at the actual fuse panel. Okay, so I had to troubleshoot and follow the circuit. And what I have found was the circuit actually went through the steering wheel, okay, all right, and the turn signal. And in order to fix the brake lights, that's where the circuit would normally break, was in the turn signal itself. I had to take literally the wheel off, okay, and there was 2 pieces in there that needed to be replaced, all right, to actually repair the brake lights. Now, I go to a mechanic shop, all right, because I don't have the tools to do this, all right, and I was in networking at the time, all right, and I tell him exactly the parts and the part number that needs to be replaced and why I'm replacing them. Now, this guy tells me, okay, the mechanic, that that's impossible, okay, all right, the turn signal has nothing to do with the brake lights. And I told him, brother, I've already troubleshot this, and I followed the circuits. Why would I do that before I take the mechanic? Because mechanics are not electricians. They're not electronic majors. And I would never hire a mechanic to do real troubleshooting on my wiring in my car. I would take it to a dealership that knows that voltage in and out and the wiring of their own car. And I'm not kidding. And I will pay that price because I know they're going to figure out what the problem is based on it's their shit. Okay? And this is what they do. Now, that's why I would never hire a plumber to work on my car. And I would never hire a mechanic to figure out an electrical system. Okay? Jaguar was my favorite car, but the electronics in their cars always had issues. It was hard finding a Jaguar dealer. So my dream car of owning a Jaguar back then became mute real fast. All right? Mercedes dealers are all over the place. They're expensive, but they're all over the place. They're not hard to find. All right, but I would never take my Mercedes to a general mechanic. It will always go to a Mercedes dealer or a mechanic who specializes in Mercedes. Now I never owned a Mercedes, but you get the idea. All right. People do this all the time. And I'm going to tell you my definition of ignorance. And that is the person who knows that they know. Because the real reality of a man of science at heart, first lesson in their life, the biggest lesson in their life that they learn eventually as time goes on is you don't know shit. Okay? It's too many things in the world, and every subject, including the concept of water, is not simple. It is extremely complicated to a level that you and I would never comprehend. So there's only so much information so deep you can take the knowledge. Okay? All right? Now, that's my philosophy on the concept of knowledge. All right? We're going to end this video, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to talk about electronics. All right? And what I want you to understand is, as an engineer, there's tons of things you're dealing with. But if you don't have a computer background, okay, all this stuff that we're going to talk about is a missing element. All right? Missing element. And then when you're asked to actually do something that's relatable to something that you have no knowledge of, you're lost. Okay? And you bow down to the concept of ignorance because you don't take the time to learn it. So I'm going to go ahead and teach you about something that has never been in a CCNA course or a CCNP or CCNA course. Okay? All right? And this is important to understand from a perspective of your devices, because guess what, guys? Your devices are nothing without power. Be strong. Be determined. Be Cisco.